Now, just don't mess it up. That undoubtedly will be the advice for those 7 political leaders as they head into the TV debate in the UK later today. And I'll rather clean that up for television. Now, if you've ever taken a turn in public speaking, you'll know that feeling of butterflies in your stomach, sweaty palms, and the fear of forgetting your words. Now, imagine a whole election at stake. That is real pressure. Well, these TV debates are quite new to us here in the UK, but they've been a staple of the US election experience, and lots of lessons have been learned, sometimes the hard way. Katty Kay has this report.
America's elections are bigger, more expensive and more glitzy than anyone else's. And in the showbiz world of US campaigns, debate nights are Oscar nights. Getting viewers to notice you in this crowded stage is tricky. It's a seemingly endless lineup of elder statesmen. Yes, men. You're lucky if you get one woman in the mix.
And you will be a one-term president.
So how do presidential hopefuls make debates work for them?
You have to have a message that stands out, and you have to have a moment or two in the debates where you stand out from all the competition.
A debate performance can define a candidate. The frontrunners want to make history. The lesser-known candidates want to make their mark, and no one wants to make a mistake.
It's 3 agencies of government when I get there that are gone: commerce, education, and the, what's the third one there? Let's see.
What Rick Perry learned from the presidential debates in 2012 was you need to be prepared. You can't have a moment where you forget what you're talking about, where you forget your message, where you forget the line you're supposed to deliver.
President Obama was a solid, if slightly boring debater. But even he has had moments he might like to forget.
He's very likable. I agree with that. I don't think I'm that bad.
You're likable enough.
Thank
Hillary,
you so
no
much.
doubt.
Likeability and presentation are as important as substance in American debates. Al Gore fell short in his campaign back in 2000 with his distracting size.
Exploration, for example, in Alaska. There's a lot of shut-in gas.
And an odd invasion of his rival's personal space.
But can you get things done? And I believe I can.
And then there is the really awkward.
Dennis and I have been friends for 25 years. I think this is a ridiculous exercise. Dennis, the thing I like best about you is your wife.
And
Success in an American presidential debate is a winning demeanor, an intelligent idea, and the ability to persuade the voters that they won't get thoroughly sick of having you on their TV screens every night before the next campaign rolls around. And that is easier said than done. Katty Kay, BBC News, Washington.
Do you know, I've seen that piece 5 times today and laughed every time. Luan de Berg is with me. He's a professional public speaker and presentation coach. Thanks very much. You were looking at all of those gaffes, smiling along. I mean, if you were advising any of these 7 later on today, what would the principal piece of advice be?
Prepare. They have to prepare. As you saw there with Governor Rick Perry, he clearly had just thought he could rely on his memory. He talks about the 3 agencies of government that are gone when I get into the White House, and then spectacularly failed to remember the 3rd one. So they cannot afford that, because in this day of rolling news, what's going to happen if there's one gaffe, that's going to be repeated time and time and time again. So they really need to prepare.
As one of the 7 there had a brain phase, as they described it, that's what they've got to avoid tonight. In terms of standing out with so many of them there, how do you actually do that, and what are the dangers of, I don't know, sharpening your elbows?
Well, it's interesting because they've all got specific objectives. You've got at one end, you've got David Cameron, Prime Minister, who has a lot to lose tonight, and he has the particular danger where the other 6 might gang up against him and it could become a feeding frenzy, and he has to remain cool and prime ministerial under that. Then, of course, you go to the 100-to-1 shot. You've got Leanne Wood from Plaid Cymru. Now, she has to make her voice heard, and she has to have a strong start. She has to keep going. She cannot afford to be alienated by the rest of the group, and she cannot afford to fall.
But also alienating yourself sometimes by, I don't know, appearing angry or shouting or being shrill. Those are all dangers that they will have to, but I know they'll have all have been coached, but you've got to sort of coach them out of that, don't you?
Well, they will have been coached, and it's the live event, it's the adrenaline that will be pumping through their bodies tonight, and they will have been coached to within an inch of their lives, but the others will be trying to goad them to make that one mistake.
And despite all of the coaching, you have to think on your feet. We played a number of gaffes there. I mean, my favourite one from recent years in America was that Dan Quayle moment in the vice president debate. And he was talking about his youthfulness, and he was drawing and talking about JFK a lot. And you had that extraordinary put down from his opponent saying, "I knew JFK, you're no JFK." That was so quick thinking, and you have to have that capacity within all of this and all the preparation to still be able to do that.
You do, and that's the problem for some of them tonight. And actually what you do have is the bookies' favourite, Nigel Farage, who is very good at thinking on his feet and very good with the one-liners like that. Ronald Reagan was very good about that when he talked about not wanting to exploit his opponent's youth and inexperience when he was being accused of being too old.
What about that almost modern phenomenon? Certainly I've been watching. I noticed it the first time, and now all of the politicians seem to be doing it, which is this odd thing, I would describe it as odd, of looking down the camera lens and addressing, I suppose, the people in their front rooms. They're all doing it now.
They're all doing it, and it was interesting because in the last election, 2010, that's when we all fell in love with Nick Clegg. Remember the I agree with Nick, because what he did was he would get a question from the audience and then look down the lens of the camera, because he realised that actually it's not the 100 people who've been specially selected to go to that debate who are the people he really wants to target. His audience are the people, as you say, in their front rooms watching him, who he wants to appeal to.
And what do you think is the ultimate objective tonight? Is it changing expectations? Is it the way people view you? You talk about Nick Clegg, him doing that last time. I mean, what is the critical thing here, do you think?
Well, they will all have different critical things. So David Cameron, critical thing to remain calm and prime ministerial. Leanne Wood, critical thing to raise her profile. Natalie Bennett, critical thing, don't make a mistake like she did on live radio not that long ago when she couldn't remember her own policies. Critical thing for Ed Miliband, appear to be a prime minister in waiting. So they will all have their critical objectives. You've got the leader of the Scottish Nationalists, who is a very formidable debater. Her critical job is to appeal to Scottish voters, yet also appeal to Labour that she could work with them in a hung parliament.
And I suppose final thing, which is expectation levels. Does that help or hinder the various major players here in terms of what people might expect, say, from a Farage, who people might expect to be good in these sorts of things, or Cameron good in these sorts of things, Miliband?
You've got more to lose. If the expectation is high, if Cameron, who is very good at this sort of thing, makes a mistake, that will really affect him. Equally, at Miliband, expectations, to be fair, are sometimes quite low. So that's why last week with Jeremy Paxman, he appeared to do very well.
And do you reckon you can blow it in just one moment like this on telly?
Does it change the result of an election? I'm not sure that it does, but it gives us lots of things to talk about, and it's all about credibility.
All right, well, we should watch tonight. Thanks very much for taking us through all of the things to watch out for. Well, more on our election, of course, all the build-up to that debate and all the issues surrounding it. Head to the BBC website. You can see who gets heard and who gets the last word on BBC World News today at 1900 GMT. And we'll be covering that debate live with plenty of analysis in the hours